My mom passed away. Oh, I see. I'm currently overseas. That's what my husband, who's been away for work, blurted out over the phone upon hearing the news of my mother's sudden passing. Not only was he not planning to return home, but he was also embarking on an overseas trip. I was stunned, but what unfolded 3 days later was even more surreal. His own parents passed away, and I couldn't reach him. The grim reality of being unable to attend his parents' funeral due to his decisions would soon haunt him. I'm Nancy, a 54-year-old homemaker. Our son, 20, recently moved out, leaving just Thomas and me at home. Our relationship started through a matchmaking effort by my late father and his longtime friend. They thought it fitting since we were both working at the same company and seemed compatible. It felt almost like an arranged meeting. We discovered shared interests in music and travel and quickly grew close. With our parents' encouragement, we married swiftly, blessed with a child, and enjoyed a harmonious married life. When our child turned 10, my father passed away after battling illness. Aside from that, our lives were relatively peaceful. However, there was one aspect of parenting that troubled me deeply. As a homemaker, our livelihood depended on my husband's salary, for which I was grateful. Yet he often claimed he was too busy with work, staying late into the night and arriving home just before the last train, when he came home at all. Some nights, a brief text saying, "I'll stay at the company tonight," was all I received. Many of the meals I lovingly prepared went uneaten. I wished he would inform me earlier if he couldn't make it home, and I questioned whether he was truly that occupied. My husband worked at the same company where my father once did. Despite my father's frequent business trips, he always made it home by nightfall or stayed overnight at work. With mortgage payments, raising our child, and daily expenses weighing on us, I couldn't voice my discontent loudly, knowing all our income came from his efforts. But his work shouldn't have exempted him from household responsibilities or caring for our child. My frustration grew as he consistently prioritized time with friends on his days off. The only glimpse our son had of his father was waking up to find him asleep beside him in the morning. Once our son began to speak, I realized he saw his father not as a parent but as a distant figure always absent from home. It felt overwhelming, like I was shouldering the burden of raising our child alone. I had confided this to my father once, but he dismissed it, insisting, "Thomas is doing his best at our company. Don't criticize your husband. Must I always support him unquestioningly?" My father staunchly believed in traditional gender roles. My mother, in turn, would listen to my grievances and gently remark, "He doesn't understand the hardships of a woman," with a resigned smile. After my father passed away, my mother's vitality faded, and I felt I couldn't burden her with my complaints about Thomas. Though she often complained about my father to me, deep down, she loved him. I had hoped to emulate my parents' loving household, but despite outward appearances, ours was different. In truth, I yearned for mutual respect. Before I knew it, a decade had passed in much the same routine. Even after our son grew up and moved out, our daily life remained largely unchanged. One day, I cautiously expressed my feelings to my husband, who rarely paid attention to household matters. "Listen, dear, now that our son is grown and living on his own, perhaps you don't need to work such long hours. I'd like you to come home earlier and spend more time here with us. We could tackle chores together, share meals." My intention was simply to encourage him to spend more time at home, but he took offense at the mention of chores and reacted with anger. "What do you think I'm working so hard for every day? And you don't even work. You expect me to come home exhausted and still do housework?" With that, he yelled and slammed the front door as he stormed out of the house. The resounding slam echoed his deep frustration. At this rate, he might not return home for days. Though my heart ached deeply, my mind strangely stayed calm. Why is it like this? All I want is a harmonious life with my husband. Did I say something wrong? Could I have handled it better to avoid upsetting him? My mother, in similar situations, seemed to handle them with grace. What's different between her and me? As I pondered, tears began to trickle down my face without my realizing it. 4 days later, my husband returned home. I'm sorry, I apologized to him. I wasn't entirely sure what I was apologizing for. I didn't feel like I had done anything wrong, yet I always apologized, and he always forgave me. This had become our routine way of reconciling. "Yeah, whatever," he said, but our relationship clearly deteriorated after that. Or perhaps it was just my dissatisfaction. Until now, I had always assumed fault and acted submissive. But this time, I couldn't feel that way anymore. I found I couldn't respect my husband. About a month later, while things remained strained between us, he dropped a bombshell. I've been transferred to Alaska. I'll be moving alone. My husband, who had grown increasingly distant, suddenly disclosed this news. Alaska, it's so far away. It feels like our hearts are already that far apart. All right, understood. Please take care. That's all I could manage to say. He packed his bags and departed for Alaska. In no time, I found myself alone in our once bustling home. It felt surreal that not long ago we were a family of 3 here. We had been married for nearly 30 years. I had soldiered on for our child's sake, but now that child was gone. Lately, it seemed divorces later in life weren't so uncommon. I wonder if we'll end up like one of those statistics. Just as I pondered this, my smartphone rang. It was my mother calling. Perhaps I could seek her advice on this matter. Perfect timing, I muttered as I picked up the phone. Hello, I'm Dr. Johnson from Chicago General Hospital. Am I speaking with the daughter of the phone's owner? A sinking feeling washed over me. Yes, I'm her daughter. Is something wrong with my mom at the hospital? Please stay calm. Your mother passed away recently due to acute heart failure. We need you to come to the hospital right away. Everything went black before my eyes. My mom is gone. Could there be some mistake? Just last week, she sounded perfectly fine on the phone. Hello? Are you still there? Hello? I'm sorry. I'm just in shock and confused. That's understandable. My condolences for your loss. I'll be there as soon as possible. Please tell me the address. I rushed to the hospital. At the reception desk, I provided my name and was directed to her room. Upon seeing her lifeless form, there was no doubt it was my mother. Facing the reality, the weight of her absence settled in. Until I arrived at the hospital, part of me hoped it was a mistake, that maybe my mom had just misplaced her phone, and someone else had a heart issue. It all feels so sudden. I hadn't even had the chance to thank her properly for raising me. Could you give us some time alone? I asked, and the nurse kindly left the room. That's when I finally let myself break down and cry. After gathering myself, I began to make arrangements for the funeral. Let's see. First, I need to reach out to the relatives and make arrangements. And I should also inform Thomas. I dialed my husband Thomas's number. He answered with a distant tone, and as I explained the situation, he simply replied, I see. Not just I see. The funeral is happening soon. I need you here. He informed me he was about to embark on an overseas trip with colleagues, a statement that inadvertently drew a sharp response from me. He defended himself, citing his constant work and asserting the right to take time off. Deciding not to argue further, knowing it would lead to, who do you think provides for us? I contacted our son, and together we organized the funeral. Seeing I was struggling, our son offered to stay with me for a while, taking a break from college to lend support. As soon as the funeral concluded and I hoped for a moment of respite, a call came from my husband's brother. Tragically, my in-laws had been involved in a fatal car accident. Despite the successive family tragedies, I still couldn't reach my husband. Modern smartphones usually work overseas, but I can't get through to Dad, my son remarked. Depending on the country or his phone settings, he might not be able to receive calls. Deciding to try email instead, I wrote, he'll surely get in touch once he returns from his trip. A week passed with no reply. When my son checked with his office, they confirmed he was on paid leave but due back in 3 days. What country is he in? Has he not seen my emails? What about his parents? Suspicious that my husband might be with his mistress, I hired a private investigator. Within 3 days, I got the answer. He was indeed having an affair. My husband took a woman he met on his trip to Japan sightseeing. I received several photos of them happily exploring the city together. It seems he's having quite a good time. In his new assignment in Alaska, I questioned what I had been accommodating all this time. Was it concern for my hard-working husband? In reality, he's just a deceitful man who travels abroad for pleasure and engages in affairs. This might not be his first time. Filled with anger, fueled by years of patience, I called my husband's office and urgently requested to speak with him. Hello? What's so urgent? I've asked you not to disturb me at work unless it's important. Didn't you read my email? Our parents have passed away. You mean your mom, right? You mentioned that earlier. Are you still upset about it? I finally managed to take some time off. No, I mean your parents. They were in a car accident. What? Are you serious? Why would I make something like this up? You claim to have just returned from abroad, but I've heard you've been back for days. Why haven't you been checking your emails? My husband seemed speechless, struggling to accept the sudden reality confronting him. Hello? Are you there? Yeah. His voice trembled. Though he had shown no hesitation in missing my mother's funeral, the news of his own parents seemed to rattle him. The funeral is done, and they've already been cremated. It's too late for remorse. I felt no sympathy as I coldly added, "You need to come back immediately." I thought I heard a strained response from him, but I hung up without acknowledging it. Mom, what's going on? He's on his way home now. And just so you know, I'm filing for divorce from your father today. What? Why all of a sudden? I understand you're upset he hasn't been reachable during this busy time, but isn't divorce a bit extreme? I laid out everything to my son. It was a harsh reality to burden him with, but he's an adult now. I believed it was better to be honest than to fabricate excuses. This is indefensible. I'm standing by you, Mom. With my son's support assured, everything was prepared. Soon after, my husband arrived home. I'm back. His tone, usually brash, now lacked its usual vigor. He appeared as a pitiful man, having lost both parents at once and unable to attend their funerals. But I need to talk to you. Your brother was pretty upset about everything, you know. I couldn't help it. Even after returning to Japan, I was busy with client meetings. Quite a young client, isn't she? With that, I showed him the picture I received from the private investigator. What? Where did you get this? Look at you two, arm in arm, having a good time. If this really is just a client, have you picked up some new tricks? It seems like this isn't your first time. I dropped the bombshell, and the impact was immediate. So I've been caught, my husband admitted without hesitation. He must have realized there was no point in trying to deny it. I pressed on. You didn't even try to see your parents in their final moments, let alone mine. Shut up. You have no idea how stressful my job is. I work tirelessly to support this family. And yes, even you, who does nothing, aren't blameless. My husband showed no remorse, only defensiveness. You're despicable. I'm ashamed to call you my father. Let's end this. Let's get a divorce. I'll file for alimony later. Your personal belongings will be sent from this house via FedEx. I'll be relieved to be rid of a parasite like you. You'll get the standard alimony, but don't expect any more than that. I had thought I was doing everything for my husband, but had he really seen me as a burden all this time? What had I been enduring all these years? Considering the money he spent on his numerous affairs, I decided to claim $45,000 in alimony. Whether he could afford it or not, he paid it in one lump sum. Previously, I used to keep track of our finances, so I had a rough idea of his financial situation. However, his overseas escapades with mistresses, bringing them to Japan and partying, coupled with his absence at his own parents' funerals, caused rumors to circulate within the company, leading to his resignation. He had held a respectable position at the company, which he likely believed he had earned on merit. In reality, his entry into the company had been facilitated through his parents' connections. Now, lacking any special skills, my husband struggled to secure even part-time work after failing to find another full-time job. According to my brothers-in-law, losing his family, job, and now his parents without the chance to say goodbye seemed to be pushing my husband to his limits. He can't sleep without taking sleeping pills and is reportedly seeing a psychiatrist. I felt no sympathy whatsoever. My son, who had promised to stay with me during this turbulent divorce, returned home concerned about my physical and mental exhaustion. I think I'll live modestly with my son. Looking ahead, I probably should have saved the alimony, but I needed a change of scenery. So I've decided to take my first overseas trip with my son. After that, I plan to start working part-time. The thought of trying something new fills me with excitement. It feels like my life is just beginning. People often say that siblings introduce the first taste of difference, but I've never wanted it to be that way. Perhaps it's because I grew up as an only child. I hope my husband and his siblings will always get along well. My name is Malia, and at 35 years old, I'm a housewife juggling household chores, childcare, and a part-time job. It's been nearly a decade since I married Albert, whom I met at work. We've been blessed with 2 children during this time. Albert has always been kind, a loving husband, and a devoted father since our dating days. Our family gets along harmoniously, and every day is typically peaceful and happy. Then, one day, a storm swept into our lives. The cause of this storm was my brother-in-law's fiancée. We met her for the first time last Christmas, and she was quite an unusual presence. It didn't bother me that she didn't lift a finger at my in-laws' house. After all, she wasn't yet married into the family, and my in-laws aren't the type to expect help just because someone is a daughter-in-law. Personally, I helped my mother-in-law, and naturally, Albert pitched in. My father-in-law and brother-in-law entertained the children. Meanwhile, my brother-in-law's fiancée spent the entire time glued to her phone. Even during Christmas greetings and meals, she never put it down. There was hardly any conversation beyond initial pleasantries. Frankly, I wondered why she had even come. I assumed she had been dragged along reluctantly by my brother-in-law and was in a bad mood. I really wanted to connect with her, so I insisted he bring her, but she seemed disinterested. Half a year after that Christmas, Dusty is getting married, my husband mentioned as he changed clothes after returning from work. Dusty is my brother-in-law. He's finally decided to tie the knot. Is it with that girl? I asked. Yeah, seems like it, he replied. He's already 30 years old and marriage is a milestone. But I'm worried about her character. Marriage changes a lot compared to just dating. I wonder if they'll have a peaceful married life. One day, my husband returned home looking exhausted. Welcome back. Work seemed tough today, I asked. No, it wasn't work, he sighed. I ran into Dusty's girlfriend, Ditette, at the office. What was she doing there? I inquired. She came to see me, he explained. She said she had something important to discuss. What does she want to talk about? I asked, curious. Well, about that, he hesitated. I was surprised she came to my office, but even more surprised by what she asked for. What did she ask for? She wanted help with wedding expenses, he revealed, or, if that's not possible, some pocket money. What? I don't understand, I replied, bewildered by the request. I couldn't grasp the situation. The cost of a wedding should be reasonable if managed within one's means. Dusty has a stable job and earns well. What baffled me more was the request for pocket money. Why would my husband give money to Dusty's girlfriend? To my surprise, my husband hesitated before continuing, reluctantly sharing. Well, she also asked if we could go out for a meal or something, just the two of us. What? Why? I exclaimed, taken aback. She said she wants to build a good relationship with me because I'll be her brother-in-law, he explained. But if that's her intention, she should come over to our house. I declined the idea of meeting her alone. I'm frustrated. Why does she need to meet you alone to build rapport? She and Dusty should simply visit us. I vented, recalling how she had been glued to her phone the entire Christmas gathering. The request for financial help and a private meeting didn't sit well with me. Unable to stay silent, I decided to confront Dusty. I asked him to come over, feeling compelled to discuss something important. I laid out everything about Ditette's behavior, hoping he'd understand. Dee would never ask for such things, Dusty insisted, refusing to believe it. Why would she ask my brother for money and suggest meeting alone? It doesn't make sense. But it's true, I insisted. I believe her. I trust Dee, Dusty asserted firmly, exchanging a troubled glance with my husband. Trusting your partner is crucial in marriage. You shouldn't marry someone you can't trust. It's normal to prioritize and believe in your fiancé over your own brother. I only heard about this from my husband, but I didn't doubt him for a moment. Trust forms the foundation of a marriage. Ultimately, Dusty wasn't to blame. He left our house somewhat upset after our discussion. My husband and I decided that unless something more serious occurred, we wouldn't intervene further. All we wanted was Dusty's happiness. However, Danette's behavior didn't cease. Having resigned from her job in anticipation of marriage, she seemed to be bored. Almost every day, she started visiting my husband during his lunch break at his office. She also sent him messages on his phone. He instructed the receptionist not to allow her in and ignored her messages. He reported each incident to Dusty, but Dusty refused to believe it. He was so infatuated with Danette that he dismissed my husband's concerns. Let's go out for a meal. Just the two of us. Could you give your dear sister-in-law some pocket money? I feel so lonely without Albert by my side. Her messages read. Even after my husband sent screenshots of these inappropriate messages to Dusty, he still refused to accept the truth. Then, I received a call from Dusty. What kind of harassment is this? Sending me these fake messages. Do you really want to ruin my happiness? He shouted angrily. My husband was deeply hurt by his brother's accusations. They had always been close, and seeing his brother turn against him was devastating. Unable to bear seeing my husband like this, I messaged Danette, asking her to stop harassing him. Her reply shocked me. "What does it have to do with you?" I couldn't believe she had addressed me so disrespectfully. I feared Dusty's impending marriage might end unhappily, but no matter what we said, Dusty refused to listen to my husband. Their once strong brotherly bond was crumbling, and my husband's loneliness was heartbreaking to witness. I had been wanting to sit down with Ditette and have a discussion, the four of us, Dusty, my husband, and myself, but time passed without that opportunity arising. One day, while my husband was away on a business trip, Dusty unexpectedly called our home phone. Surprised by the unusual call, I picked up and heard his loud voice. "Malia, are you still at home? What are you doing?" he asked urgently. "I was just hanging up laundry, but what's going on?" I replied, caught off guard. "Is Ditette with you? She's saying if she's not attending the wedding, you need to pay the cancellation fee." Dusty's words stunned me into silence. I struggled to comprehend what I had just heard. Wedding, absence, cancellation fee. Wait, what are you talking about? There's a wedding today, I nearly shouted, trying to grasp the situation. Dusty sounded surprised by my panicked response. "Yes, I sent you an invitation. You marked 'will attend' on the reply card." "We never received it. That's impossible," I exclaimed, feeling the surge of confusion and frustration. After some back and forth about the missing invitation, Dusty seemed pressed for time. "Forget about today. If Albert is on a business trip, it can't be helped. Let's talk properly later," he said, and then hung up. I stood there in disbelief. A wedding? Dusty's wedding today. I frantically called my husband, hoping he would answer despite being on his business trip. "Honey, I think something terrible has happened. I can't understand," I started, my voice trembling with anxiety. After taking a deep breath, I continued. A few days later, I recounted the phone call with Dusty to my husband after he returned from his business trip. We decided to visit Dusty's new apartment. As we stood outside the rental, we rang the intercom repeatedly with no response. Finally, to our surprise, Ditette, now my sister-in-law, answered. "We don't want to talk to rude people who cancel a wedding at the last minute and then refuse to pay the cancellation fee." "Leave," she demanded sharply. Unwilling to leave without seeing Dusty, we persisted, requesting Ditette to let him come out. However, she refused. Unable to hold back any longer, my husband called Dusty, who appeared to be occupied in the bathroom but hurried out upon our insistence. Finally, Dusty emerged, and we were able to approach the door of his new home. Just as the door opened, Ditette reappeared. "Ditette, I'm sorry we couldn't attend the wedding, but we really need to talk," I started. "There's nothing to talk about. You're just going to make excuses, right? Don't think an apology will suffice after you embarrass us at our wedding," Ditette retorted coldly. "We've brought the wedding gift we couldn't deliver. Please come in," my husband interjected, attempting to ease the tension. To our surprise, Ditette's attitude quickly shifted upon seeing the gift. My husband and I exchanged relieved smiles. Dusty, who had been unable to approach due to Ditette blocking the door, finally joined us. "Dusty, we're sorry we couldn't be at your wedding. But about the invitation," I began, wanting to clarify. "Why did you lie about not receiving it? If you couldn't make it because of work, you could have just told me," Dusty questioned, clearly confused. "We really never received the invitation." "That's impossible," my husband insisted. The debate about the missing invitation resumed until my husband remembered the reply postcard. "Here it is. The address on it isn't from around here. It's from a local post office, likely near our area. Our house is about a 20-minute drive from Dusty's apartment, and if it were from our neighborhood, it would have a different post office address," my husband explained, showing the postcard. "Did you have the local post office handle this?" Dusty asked, puzzled. "Why would it complicate things like that?" My husband replied quickly. "Then who handled the invocations?" I inquired, looking at Dusty. "Deet did," Dusty replied reluctantly, confirming my suspicion. I had suspected that Danette had taken charge of most of the wedding preparations while Dusty focused on work. She had handled the invitations, and now it seemed like a deception. Something had bothered me since I first saw the postcard. The names written on it, mine and my husband's, were clearly not in our handwriting. My husband had a talent for calligraphy and wrote beautifully, whereas I struggled with my own handwriting, which was far from elegant. Normally, I relied on my husband to fill out forms and documents for our children's school due to my poor penmanship. The names on the postcard were written in a cute, distinct style that was certainly not ours. I can't write in such a cute style. This handwriting. It's Danette's, I realized aloud, feeling a sense of disbelief that we hadn't noticed sooner. It was only now that Dusty also recognized the handwriting. Danette, what is the meaning of this? I don't know, Danette stammered, feigning innocence. It's clearly your handwriting. Realizing the truth, Dusty confronted Danette angrily. She appeared panicked and evasive. My husband stepped in to calm his brother, asking Danette quietly, "Why did you do this, Danette?" We admit it was our fault for not confirming the wedding date, but we believed the invitation would come, so we didn't bother to ask. I'm saddened that I missed my brother's big day, my husband explained, trying to understand. Why did you do it, Danette? Dusty demanded, his frustration evident. Initially scared, Danette hesitated before admitting, because you were in the way, Albert, attending the wedding, showing the messages I sent. I thought it would be troublesome. In the way, Dusty repeated incredulously. So you tried to set us up to protect yourself? Our parents and relatives scolded us, questioning why we prioritized work over my brother's wedding. They even criticized my wife as inconsiderate. Danette fell silent under the weight of her own admission. She had manipulated the situation to tarnish our reputation among relatives, hoping we might avoid family gatherings if they thought poorly of us. Never trust someone who calls themselves cute, Dusty remarked bitterly. That's what I should have realized. And now what? Danette retorted defensively. It's Dusty's fault for not earning enough. Her blunt words stunned us all. Until then, we had seen Danette as easygoing, but now we saw her true colors. My husband, Dusty, and I were left shocked and dismayed by her selfish actions. I want to be a housewife, relaxing at home, lunching at my favorite places. Dusty's salary won't allow that, I told Albert. An allowance is one thing, but why does she insist on meeting you alone? What's wrong with wanting to dine with a handsome man? Her defiant attitude left me speechless. Danette, perhaps overwhelmed, started tearing up. I expected Dusty to explode in anger, but instead, he sighed deeply. He seemed to be holding himself back, maintaining his composure. Slowly, he extended his hand to Danette, and she placed hers in his. Dusty, will you forgive me? She pleaded. He withdrew his hand abruptly. What are you misunderstanding, Danette? Just give it to me. What? What do you mean? Your mobile phone. Show it to me now, Danette protested. Dusty snatched the phone from her before she could react. After a moment of operating it, his face turned pale. Wow, he muttered, avoiding Danette's reaching hand as he held the phone high above her. You've been cheating, haven't you? At his words, my husband stepped forward and took the phone from Dusty easily. Given their similar height, his expression grew stern as he examined the screen. I see quite a few. What do you mean by this? My husband asked, showing me the phone screen. This is a violation of privacy, Danette shouted in anger, attempting to retrieve the phone. Dusty held her back. Wow, how many guys are there? He muttered, his eyes scanning the explicit messages on the screen. The chat application revealed conversations with multiple men, filled with suggestive content. Had fun today, let's do it again. Read one message. I'm free tomorrow since my boyfriend is working, said another. I need more stamina. Sneaking around is so exciting. Can't get enough with my boyfriend. How about a hotel tomorrow? These messages were just the tip of the iceberg. You're the worst, truly the worst, Danette yelled at us, but I couldn't help but think she was the lowest of the low. Finally, under our intense glares, Danette fell silent. I never thought I'd be considering divorce so soon after getting married. Dusty sighed heavily. Divorce? Danette panicked at his words. I wanted to ask her if she hadn't thought divorce was a possibility all along. Of course, I can't stay married to someone who cheats, Dusty continued. But wait, it was just for fun. You can see from the messages it was just play. Danette tried to defend herself. You think it's okay to be involved with other men if it's just play? My husband interjected. No, I don't. I won't do it anymore. I won't meet them again. Danette's slip of honesty made Dusty sigh once more. I know a lawyer. I'll introduce you, my husband offered gently, placing a comforting hand on Dusty's shoulder. Dusty looked at him with a tearful expression. Danette screamed as if it were the end of the world. For Dusty, it was a sad ending. I absolutely don't want a divorce, he muttered. For Danette, it must have seemed like the end of the world. She caused her own storm and ruined everything, I thought to myself, watching her distressed reaction. Later, Dusty came to our house, smiling and playing with our delighted sons. "I've successfully divorced," he announced, his face looking refreshed. Det foolishly left messages and even photos on her phone, providing perfect evidence. The divorce ended with Dusty receiving compensation, my husband explained. Of course, Danette couldn't pay, so her parents deeply apologized and settled on her behalf, my husband continued. What happened to Danette? Dusty answered quietly. She's working from morning till night to repay her parents. They're keeping a strict eye on her so she won't escape. Dusty's face turned complex as he heard about his almost in-laws. It seems Danette will lead a very constrained life from now on. She wanted an easy life as a housewife, but that seems unlikely now. Don't underestimate housewives, my husband remarked. I can't imagine someone with such misconceptions managing to work properly. She's probably whining while working, Dusty added, reflecting on Danette's new reality. Well, it was tough, but it's good that you found out early. Think of it as a valuable life experience, my husband reassured Dusty. Yeah, I'll take my time, but eventually I'll start looking for someone else, my true soulmate, Dusty said with a hint of optimism. Dusty, you'll be fine. Keep it up, my husband encouraged him. I'm sorry for the trouble, and thank you, Dusty said gratefully. Don't mention it. Protecting my little brother is natural, my husband replied warmly. As I watched them share a laugh, I couldn't help but feel relieved. I was worried when things got tense, but brothers being close is best after all, I thought to myself. Mama, what's going on? My sons asked as they approached, looking puzzled. I smiled and placed my hands on both of their heads. You two always stay close like your dad and uncle, okay? Okay, Mama, they giggled in unison. Watching them play together, I couldn't help but smile warmly, cherishing the bond they shared. My name's Alice, and I'm 26 years old. I'm married to my husband, Rob, who is 4 years older than me. We fell in love at the office where he was my superior in the sales department. He pursued me with unwavering determination. At the time, I was only 24 and felt that marriage was too soon, but he was incredibly passionate, saying things like, "Please just become my wife for now. We can figure out the rest together. I'll make you absolutely happy. No other man in the world wants to make you happier than I do." In the end, his fervor won me over, and I saw in him a man who would take care of me for life. So, I decided to accept his proposal. A year after he began courting me, we got married. Now, we're celebrating our first year of marital bliss. Since it was a workplace romance, it felt a bit awkward, so I decided to change jobs. I'm considering taking a part-time job at a bakery. That's a good idea, Rob said. You can also take some cooking classes and enjoy a leisurely life. The truth is, his family is quite affluent. Incredibly, his father bought us an apartment when we got married. I feel a bit guilty about it. It's okay, Rob reassured me. Let's take advantage of what our parents can provide. All you have to do is be a good daughter-in-law. Okay, I guess. I've done my best to be a good daughter-in-law, like visiting my in-laws with gifts. We're just happy that a beautiful girl like Alice has become our daughter-in-law, they said. That's right, Rob's mother added. He's a bit of a handful, isn't he? Please take good care of him. Sure, I replied. They are very kind-hearted in-laws. Of course, my parents are also pleased with this marriage. They warmly welcomed Rob, who is well-educated and on a fast track in his career. When are you planning on having children? My mother asked. It's easier if you start raising them early. Well, we're thinking about it. It's better to have them sooner rather than later. Raising kids requires a lot of energy. Well, it's not like I want to go out and party anymore. I guess I'll try to be a good mom. It's nice to be able to talk so candidly with my own mother. I started thinking that it might be better to have children sooner rather than later. In this way, everyone in our family was blessing our marriage, except one person. My older sister, Susan, is not happy about our marriage. She's 6 years older than me, at 32. She has been a white-collar worker for 14 years since graduating high school but has never had a boyfriend. She has always seen me as her adversary since we were little, and it was always a bit scary. I have memories of my sister bullying me ever since I was a toddler. Even as I grew up and became aware of her animosity, her bullying was insidious. She would tear up my notebooks and hide my pencil case, petty pranks that really irked me. The worst was when she'd take the diary I kept hidden in my desk, show it to our parents, and laugh. Though I wasn't writing anything strange, it was still very discomforting. It seemed she didn't like that our parents were fond of me. There was another deciding factor: our looks. To put it modestly, I was born with a well-arranged face that took the best features from both my parents. My sister, on the other hand, didn't look anything like me. She had a plain face, curly hair, and impure skin. It seemed she had a complex about her looks, but I was at a loss about what to do with her antagonistic feelings toward me. Even though I was cute, I wasn't at the level of a model or an actress, just an ordinary level of attractiveness. I always thought that instead of being jealous and mean to me, she should have been trying to make herself prettier. However, she seemed to be feeling her complex deep inside. After graduating from high school, she started working right away and saved up money. Just before turning 20, she underwent plastic surgery. At the time, I was only 14, and I was shocked to see my sister come home with a blue bruise on her face. I thought she had been violently assaulted, but apparently she had undergone plastic surgery on her eyes, nose, lips, and entire facial contour all at once. After a while, when the swelling and bruises subsided, my sister looked like a different person. She still had the look of someone who had plastic surgery, but she was prettier than before. Above all, I thought it was okay as long as she was satisfied. At that time, I believed that since her face had become beautiful, her heart should also become a little more beautiful. Even though we were not very close as sisters, I hoped this change would improve our relationship. When I announced that I was getting married, my sister made a sarcastic remark. "Huh, you're already getting married. Aren't you a fool for selling yourself short?" Once again, I realized that we would never get along. After my wedding, it seemed she had undergone more plastic surgery. Her skin was unnaturally shiny, and her eyes appeared even more double-lidded. Only she knew whether she felt improved or not. Despite our strained relationship, my sister started visiting my house frequently, sometimes even staying over. "Sis, what's up? What's wrong?" "Because you got married first, Mom has been nagging me about finding a partner. I'm just waiting for the right one." "I see. So, it's uncomfortable at home because of me, and now you want to stay here." She even brought her personal belongings with her. It was too forceful and annoying, but I couldn't just kick her out. I assumed she wouldn't visit often since she didn't like me much, but she started coming over at least once a week, sometimes even 2 or 3 times a week. It was becoming a real nuisance. We began having strange living patterns, like having dinner with my husband and her, and drinking together when she brought alcohol at night. I wasn't having much fun, and her presence creeped me out. But for some reason, my husband Rob didn't seem to mind and always welcomed her. I finally asked him, "Hey, aren't you bothered when my sister comes over?" "Nah, not at all. She's a great gal, always bringing little gifts and stuff. The other day when she stayed over, we even went to the train station together. She's really something, isn't she? And boy, she's quite the looker from the side." Side profile: she's had work done, you know. She never brings me any gifts. So many things didn't add up, but seeing him so chummy with her, I couldn't say a word. I tried giving off the "please don't come over anymore" vibe, but my sister didn't catch on. Days went on like this until one day, my husband dropped a bombshell. "Listen, I'm sorry. I'm leaving you, Alice. Susan is pregnant." I couldn't believe my ears. "Say what?" "It's a long story," Rob said, "but I just met with her. She's already 10 weeks along." She even showed me the ultrasound picture. My head was spinning. Ultrasounds out of the blue. I couldn't wrap my head around what was happening. What the heck is going on? Just as I was about to give my husband a piece of my mind, the doorbell rang. My sister was standing at the entrance of our apartment building. I buzzed her in and invited her inside. It was about time I got an explanation for all this madness. "Oh, Alice," Susan said as she entered. "I know this isn't ideal, but you'll still congratulate me, right?" She pulled out an ultrasound picture from her wallet with a smug look on her face. "Are you out of your mind?" I snapped. "Out of my mind or not, you should face reality. Rob is the father. We've been in love, you see." My husband looked uncomfortable, but his affections were clearly now with my sister. "I'm sorry, Alice, but you're still young. You can start over. Now that things are this way with Susan, I gotta step up to the plate and make her happy. No man alive wants to make her happier than I do," he said, echoing the same line he used when he proposed to me. It seemed he was completely drunk on himself and his forbidden affair, blinded by my sister's pregnancy. Stupid man, I screamed inside my head. My sister was still wearing that smug look on her face. She walked into the room and stood next to my husband like she owned the place. Rob, let's get on with it, she said. You know your sister will do the right thing and step aside for her big sis. So many emotions were welling up inside me. My sister had always been the sneaky kind, doing all sorts of nasty things behind my back. This, however, was the ultimate betrayal. When she heard I was getting married, she laughed it off. And now, to add insult to injury, she's taken my husband. At that moment, my feelings for my despicable sister and the man standing next to her turned ice cold. But I thought to myself, I'm not going to let them have their way. There's no way I'm getting divorced. No way, no how, over my dead body. What? My husband exclaimed. Why not? What about the baby your sister is carrying? I couldn't care less. The very idea of you two being involved makes my skin crawl. So he had been seeing her and had the nerve to come and hang out in my room, and the three of us had been breaking bread together. I was beginning to think he was doing it just to tick me off more than anything. I didn't budge an inch. I won't give you what you want. I don't love him anymore, so he's all yours but no divorce. Go ahead and have your little love child. Excuse me, my sister shot back. You say that to your own sister. You're one to talk, doing this to your own sister. Just pack up and leave. This apartment was bought by Rob's parents, so I have a right to stay. I don't know what planet you're on. You're just the other woman who happens to be pregnant with my husband's child. I'm the one legally married to him. There's no way I'm leaving. Don't you talk back to me, my sister screamed, her face red with anger. Maybe she thought she'd win if she got pregnant. Well, she's got another thing coming. I glared at her. If you keep pushing, I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. Seeing me stand up to her for the first time, my sister looked a bit shaken and said, Fine. Anyway, Rob will be mine. Keep on struggling. It's pathetic. She stormed off. What a piece of work. I made up my mind not to consider her my sister anymore. Ignoring my husband, I went to the bedroom. He mumbled something outside the door, but I pretended not to hear him and continued giving him the cold shoulder until he gave up and slept on the couch. The next day, I took action. I went to my in-laws to spill the beans, figuring I needed to make the first move before Rob did anything. They were shocked and apologized for their son's behavior. That darn fool. No way in heck we're accepting this. That woman's outrageous too. Oh, sorry, she's your sister, Alice. No, I've decided to cut ties with her. I can't believe she's pregnant with my husband's child. Exactly. We're on your side, Alice. Let us know if you need a lawyer. Thank you. I don't plan to divorce him for the time being. There's no need to give them what they want. Is that okay with you? Absolutely. We're here to clean up our stupid son's mess. I thanked them and left. Next, I went to my parents. I thought my sister might have talked to them, but it seems she didn't have the guts to tell them yet. What? What on earth is she thinking? Gives me a headache. What are you going to do now? You should come back home. No need to be with that man. Yeah, that's what I'll do. I decided to leave the apartment and go back to my folks. There was no way I was living with that man. He was probably sneaking around with my sister and treating me like a third wheel. I thought to myself that I should play my cards right. My sister didn't come back to her parents when she realized I wasn't returning to the apartment. We essentially swapped houses, but I guess it's fair to say I came out on top for now. I managed to move my stuff out of the condo with the help of my parents, and it seems my sister moved in as soon as I moved out. When I reported this to my in-laws, they were livid. No way we're okay with this. And who do you think put up the money? They went ahead, changed the name on the deed, and just sold the condo. I had to chuckle when I heard about it. My sister and her now husband looked none too pleased as they moved out and rented an apartment. As for me, my husband kept begging me with tears in his eyes, saying, Please agree to the divorce. We have a baby on the way. Do you want to make your sister a single mom? I was adamant. I won't agree to a divorce. That's final. And I didn't budge. He threatened legal action, but I said, Go ahead, make my day. To ensure he didn't file for divorce behind my back, I put in a request to reject any divorce papers. If the other woman had been a stranger, maybe I wouldn't have been so stubborn. But since it was my sister, I knew they'd flaunt the baby to my in-laws and parents, making it impossible to sever ties like you can with strangers. I endured a wicked woman who thought everything would be fine as long as she had a child. I knew I wouldn't move on and find someone else just like that, so I planned to drag this out as long as possible without officially splitting. Then I decided to make a triumphant return to the same workplace as my husband. I reached out to our mutual boss, explained everything, and got my job back. Tough break, but you're still young. You'll bounce back, my colleague said, cheering me on. Since I blabbed to everyone at work about what my husband did, he got the cold shoulder from everyone. Dude, that's messed up. Getting your sister-in-law pregnant. That's some next-level creepiness, they said, and he ended up quitting because everyone was giving him the stink eye. Serves him right. 9 months later, my sister had her baby. Neither set of parents acknowledged her giving birth. My good-for-nothing husband, who painted himself into a corner, told me about it. It's a boy, he said. Oh, really? Given all the plastic surgery she's had, I bet he doesn't look like her, huh? I replied with a bit of sass. Wait, what? Plastic surgery? What do you mean? He asked. But I just said, who knows, and hung up. Turns out my sister, let's call her Susan, ended up having Rob's child without marrying him. They're living together now, but at the end of the day, they're just two unrelated people. She's not even really a common-law wife. It's pathetic that two grown-ups who can't get their parents' blessing are living together and having a kid. What's more, he can't find a job. My sister, who's got a nasty streak, is apparently complaining nonstop because things aren't going her way, and he's so frazzled he can't get hired anywhere. My sister quit her job when she had the baby, and now the two of them are living by draining their savings. But even if they manage to live somewhat normally, cold stares from both sets of parents await them, along with a life where they are whispered about behind their backs by society. I wonder if my sister really liked that husband of hers. Did she do all this just to get at me? If so, I think she's kind of pitiful. We're estranged now, so it doesn't matter to me anyway. As for me, I am finally thinking of giving my good-for-nothing husband the boot. I'm going to go through a lawyer to make sure to claim alimony, and I think it's time for me to get ready for the next chapter in my life. I'm glad I didn't just hand over the role of being his wife when he was over the moon. If I had done that, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. This past year has been really tough, but I'm going to forget all that and move forward. My name is Emily, and I'm 32 years old, a stay-at-home mom. My husband Benjamin, 34, works a regular office job. We have a beautiful little girl named Mia, and after 8 years of marriage, our 6-year-old daughter has both of us wrapped around her finger. I also have an older sister, Lily, who just turned 35. She recently got divorced due to personality clashes and is now a single mom to her son Logan, who is 4 years old. One day, we had planned a trip to the zoo with just the 4 of us. Unfortunately, I caught a cold and had to stay in bed. Benjamin decided to take the day off from work and still take Mia and Logan to the zoo. It ended up being just him and Lily alone, despite them being in-laws. Little did I know, that day would mark a change. Fast forward to another day. I was walking down the shopping street on my way home from the grocery store when I glimpsed Benjamin and Lily in a cafe by chance. I was puzzled but had to pick up Mia from after-school care soon, so I headed home without dwelling on it. That night, when Benjamin got home, he casually mentioned they ran into each other and sought shelter from the rain in the cafe. I believed him. However, from then on, he started coming home late more often, asking for more pocket money, and going out on his days off. When Lily visited, their relationship seemed more intimate than before, leaving me with a string of suspicions. Despite this, I trusted him. Benjamin still adored Mia, and we seemed to have a good relationship. Little did I know, I was the only one who thought everything was fine. Then, an incident occurred that shattered my illusion. One day, as usual, Lily came over to our house. A friend invited me on a trip. Would you mind taking care of Logan for about a week? It's in the Bahamas, she asked persistently. Initially hesitant, I understood Lily had it tough since her divorce. Despite my reservations, I reluctantly agreed. As Lily's departure approached, Benjamin announced he would be out of town for a few days on a business trip. Surprisingly, it was the same day as Lily's trip to the Bahamas. Was this merely a coincidence? Was it my imagination that Benjamin seemed secretive and overly attached to his phone? Was it my sister's tough times clouding my judgment? The morning of Lily's trip, she arrived with Logan. I noticed immediately that something was wrong. Logan's hand was hot, his body feverish. Lily confirmed he'd had a fever since yesterday. We can't delay. We need to get him to a hospital quickly, I insisted. But then Lily dropped a bombshell. I'll leave Logan to you. Shocked, I protested. You can't possibly leave a sick child behind. I have no choice. We've planned this trip for a while. Please take good care of him, she said, brushing off my concerns. Despite my pleas, she left, leaving me to care for Logan, whose health took precedence over everything else. I couldn't believe it. Logan was suffering with a high fever, and yet his condition worsened from the stress of moving around. I quickly tucked him into bed and placed a cold, damp towel on his forehead. While preparing an ice pillow in the freezer, my husband woke up. Honey, it seems like Logan has a fever, he remarked. Really? My sister's awful. She left Logan like this to go on a trip. I replied, frustration evident in my voice. It can't be helped. They've had this trip planned for a long time, and it's too late to cancel now. You too, dear. Poor Logan. If you're so concerned, then you should take care of him. Honey, can you do something about your business trip? If Logan has a contagious disease, he might pass it on to Mia. I'll take care of Logan, and I need you to take care of Mia, I suggested, hoping my husband would prioritize our daughter over his work. But my hope was dashed. What? That's impossible. If you're worried, why not leave her with your parents? That won't work. Our parents are busy with their jobs, and your parents live too far away to drop her off at this hour. Then it can't be helped. Logan will be fine if we let him rest. Don't worry, he said dismissively. Please don't be so casual about this. What do you want me to do? I can't change my plans. Oh, it's time. I have to go now. Bye. With that, he hurriedly left. Left alone, I immediately called my parents. They couldn't take time off from their sudden work commitments, but they agreed to leave work early and pick up Mia as soon as possible. I felt relieved when my mom assured me they were on their way. Until my mom arrives, I'll have to keep Maya locked in her room. I feel sorry for her, but it can't be helped, I thought to myself. Meanwhile, Logan's condition seemed to be worsening. He started coughing in addition to the fever. In the afternoon, my mom, who had left work early, arrived. I handed Mia over to her and headed straight to the pediatric clinic with Logan. In the car, the motion seemed to make Logan uncomfortable, which was hard to see. The doctor said it was just a common cold and prescribed a fever reducer. He asked us to observe Logan and call an ambulance if his fever went up or if he seemed delirious. I'm sorry, Mom, for leaving Maya with you. I apologize. Don't worry about it. More importantly, I'm concerned about Logan, my mom reassured me. After hanging up with my mom, I decided to call my husband's office. I needed to find out where he was staying on his business trip, just in case. The reply I received was, I should be on paid vacation. I sighed, lifting my voice towards the heavens as if making a plea. A dreaded suspicion was beginning to solidify. Opening my husband's laptop, I had never looked through it before, but a quick scan of his browsing history revealed his destination, the Bahamas. Both flight tickets and hotel bookings were arranged by him. I recognized the hotel's name. It was the same place my sister had mentioned. My sister and husband in the Bahamas at the same time, staying in the same hotel. Such a coincidence seemed next to impossible. The mere fact that my husband was in the Bahamas, taking paid leave while claiming to be on a business trip, was alarming. Curious, I looked at my smartphone, checking my sister's social media posts. There were no new posts, but looking at her recent ones, although not clearly visible, I could tell she was frequently with someone. The glimpses of clothing that could catch were all too familiar. What changed my suspicion into certainty was a photo where the wristwatch of the man she was with was visible, a watch I had given my husband. Though not expensive, it was from a unique manufacturer, making the odds that another man dressed like my husband, wearing the same watch, would appear in my sister's photo infinitesimally small. And then I found the conclusive piece of evidence, a photo titled Window Shopping, with my sister's reflection on the glass. On the edge of that photo, another person's reflection was undeniably my husband. My blissfully ignorant sister must have posted the picture without noticing her husband's reflection in the glass. My hands trembling, I saved all the pictures. There was no mistake about it. My sister and husband were having an affair. Right now, they were together. I felt everything I had built up with my husband crumbling down all at once. I tried calling them numerous times, but soon a voicemail message started playing. It seemed they had turned off their phones. Logan's fever still hadn't broken. Seeing his distressed face, anger started to rise within me. Despite our young child's suffering, despite being in such a difficult situation right now, my sister and husband were probably laughing, enjoying their vacation in the Bahamas. Could there be a worse story? I was trembling with anger, wondering what to do, but that could wait. First, I needed Logan to recover. However, Logan's fever showed no signs of abating. In fact, it seemed to be increasing. I was shocked when I took his temperature. 42 degrees Fahrenheit. Children tend to run high fevers. He had experienced 40 degrees before, but never this high. Why isn't the fever reducer working? Logan was completely drained. It looked painful for him to even move. What should I do? I fought hard to suppress the panic that was threatening to overtake me. I need to call an ambulance, I decided, clutching my smartphone tightly. Mama, Logan murmured in a small voice, his face contorted in pain. He called for his aunt. Unforgivable. I will never forgive them, I thought as my vision seemed to turn red with anger. Logan's condition took a sudden turn for the worse. A week had passed since then. Contrary to my feelings of sorrow, today was a clear day. Staring blankly at the vast blue sky, tears began to spill over. I had lost count of how many times I had cried, yet the tears wouldn't stop. I could feel Maya's hands trembling in mine. My daughter was crying too. As I lifted her up, I saw my parents weeping uncontrollably over her small, trembling shoulders, along with everyone else in attendance. Suddenly, my smartphone vibrated. I put Maya down and saw my sister's name on the screen. Hello. Emily. Long time no see. I just got back from the Bahamas. I've just landed at the airport. I'm off to pick up Logan. Thanks for looking after him, my sister said cheerfully. It felt like a phone call from another world. He's gone to heaven, I muttered to myself. What? My sister on the other end of the phone didn't seem to understand what I had said. Huh? Heaven? What are you talking about? I don't understand. That's what I'm saying. He went to heaven while you were on your trip to the Bahamas. Huh? I don't understand what you're saying. You'll understand when you get here, I replied, my voice heavy with grief. The funeral is over and we're at the crematorium. Huh? Crematorium? My sister sounded confused. When I tried to explain the location of the crematorium, she abruptly hung up the phone. Logan. My sister just got out of the taxi and dramatically changed her expression as she started running. She called his name and looked around, but Logan was nowhere to be found. Where is he? He's not here. Of course he's not. What do you mean? I slowly pointed in one direction towards the crematorium. The crematorium doesn't emit smoke like it used to, but it's true. He's being cremated right now, I whispered. Logan? That day, the day you dropped off Logan. His fever shot up to 42 degrees Fahrenheit all at once. 42 degrees Fahrenheit. The antipyretic we got from the pediatrician had no effect. His condition worsened rapidly. We had to call an ambulance in a panic. So that means Logan is... I don't want to answer that. We're in the middle of a funeral, I said, spreading my arms wide, pointing at the crematorium. Hey, what does this mean? What happened to Logan? Why are you here? Someone shouted in place of my speechless sister. It was my husband. Unbelievably, he had come here with my sister. What does that matter right now? What about Logan? Of course it matters. Not losing to my husband's voice, I shouted back, how can you two just abandon your family and go on a secret love trip? Moreover, Logan had a fever, and even when I said I needed help, you ignored me and went on your trip. Are you out of your mind? Who? What are you talking about? I already know. When I asked your company, they said you had taken paid leave. I checked your computer and found a booking for a trip to the Bahamas. You were on the same flight, if not the same hotel, as my sister. You think you can just claim this coincidence? I must have had a terrifying look on my face. My husband lost his words under my intimidating stare. Tell me, Emily, did he die? Do you have the luxury to ask such a question now? What do you think we're doing here? Why do you think I'm in a simple, modest dress, standing at a crematorium? Don't you get it? No. My sister's scream dominated the scene as she broke down crying. I looked down at her with cold eyes. You have no right to cry. You abandoned your son to go on a secret trip with my husband. You're the worst kind of person. I was lonely. I was so lonely all by myself, so I just what? Reached out to your sister's husband? What do you mean? I've done nothing wrong. It's not my fault. The real villain here is my ex-husband who refused to take our son. And it's not just him, it's also the fault of our parents who never helped me with the child. And Emily too, my sister, never taking responsibility. I didn't choose to have a child. I didn't choose to be a single mother. I wanted him to take our son if we were going to get divorced, but he refused. I've been struggling alone because of that. But I didn't. I couldn't. Logan? Logan. Lily's voice broke as she said his name. It was her lover. My husband comforted her as she collapsed into tears. It seemed they were no longer interested in hiding their affair. Don't blame everyone else for your problems. Our parents and I have helped as much as we could. You can't justify leaving a sick child to go on a tryst. Not realizing how rotten you are, you're the worst. Hey Emily, isn't that a bit harsh? Lily just lost Logan. She's in shock. Shut up, accomplice. I'm divorcing you, so be ready to pay what you owe. What? What does that have to do with anything? It has everything to do with it. My husband and I argued while my sister cried. It was a chaotic situation. Our parents approached my tear-streaked sister, started blaming them. To add, Mom, why didn't you take care of Logan properly? Why did you let Logan? Suddenly, there was a loud slap. Enough with your nonsense. It was my father who slapped my sister's face. Don't blame others when you were the one who abandoned your child. But, and having an affair with your sister's husband, you shameless woman. I'm ashamed to have raised you like this. My sister cried even louder at her father's words. I wanted to punch my husband too. I was glaring at him when, Mommy. I heard a little boy's voice. My sister quickly turned around. There. What? Logan? My sister ran towards them, but the man quickly moved Logan out of her reach. Hey, what are you doing, Andrew? The man holding Logan was Andrew, my sister's ex-husband. He was the one who divorced my sister, citing irreconcilable differences. What are you doing leaving Logan like that? He's my son too. I complied with the court's decision that it's better for a mother to have custody, even though you insisted on not giving me parental rights. But you wouldn't let me see him, no matter how many times I asked. My worry proved justified. You're not fit to be Logan's mother. Just shut up. You should just pay the child support. I'd pay any amount for Logan, but you left him without care. You don't even know how critical his condition was, and you're out on your affair trip. That day, when Logan's condition deteriorated, I panicked and called an ambulance. When we got to the hospital and while he was being treated, I called her parents and Andrew, Logan's father. He was surprised when I told them my sister was on a trip with my husband. After that, Logan, who was discharged from the hospital in good health, was resting at Andrew's and his parents' house. Wait a minute, you're saying Logan's okay? Then whose? My husband asked, puzzled, staring at the crematorium. It's her grandmother. Our grandmother. Mother to me and my sister, and great-grandmother to Maya and Logan, I replied. She was in her advanced years and bedridden, living in a nursing facility. She passed away recently from old age. Despite being bedridden, our grandma was quite lucid and doted on her great-grandchildren, Maya and Logan. Whenever we visited her at the nursing home, she would light up with joy. Her sudden departure left us, my parents and Maya, in deep sorrow, unable to do anything but grieve. Logan, who had been ill, couldn't attend the funeral. However, since he'd called my sister to the crematorium, Andrew was there. His fever had subsided, and he looked well. You tricked us. No one said Logan had died. My sister accused us with her eyes, but it was we who had the right to accuse. I didn't hear about Grandma's death either, she snapped back. I tried calling both of you several times to tell you about Grandma's passing, but the line was always busy. Considering how kind she was to you, it's unfathomable that you're this late. Enough. You're all making fools of us. Logan, let's go home. You don't want to stay with such a man. You want to be with Mom, right? Andrew, give Logan back right now. Will you ever stop? The one who scolded my sister, who was bearing down on Andrew, was her father. Do you still think you can keep Logan with you after all of this? What you've done could have gotten you in legal trouble for child abandonment. You've proven to be an unfit mother. Never think you'll be allowed near Logan again. Logan will be raised by Andrew. Dad, how could you? We've decided to fully support Andrew and hire a lawyer. You are no longer our daughter. We're cutting ties with you. Mom. My sister's face went pale at her parents' harsh words. I stood in front of her with a firm stance. I'm divorcing my husband, so why don't the two of you stick together? You seem fine leaving your children behind to go on an overseas trip. Upon hearing this, my husband burst out, "Emily, wait, it was just a lapse in judgment. Lily and I were just fooling around. The ones who matter to me are you and Mia." Then my sister also started shouting, "What do you mean fooling around? You told me you no longer loved Emily and that I was the only one you loved." Stop the noise. I just love my daughter. Don't mess with me." As the storm reignited between my husband and my sister, we left the scene with my grandmother's ashes. After that, despite many disagreements, with the help of a lawyer, I managed to settle everything. Logan went to live with his dad. I thought he might feel sad being away from his mother, but he was rather pleased. It turned out my sister wasn't functioning as a mother at all. My husband and I had our disputes. Well, more accurately, my husband was absent. After being scolded by both my parents and his, he was feeling down. Then our daughter landed the knockout punch. "I don't need daddy." She might be only 6 years old, but girls mature quickly. She must have understood her father's despicable actions in her own way. When our daughter looked at my husband like he was a bug, I couldn't help but laugh. For my husband, who adored his daughter, no, my ex-husband, there could be no greater punishment. He was allowed to see his daughter, but whether she wanted to see him was up to her. And so, the storm came to an end. Maya and I returned to my parents' home and are living peacefully. My parents are thrilled to live with Mia. She's starting elementary school next year, so we're excited about the preparations. I plan to find a job when she starts school. Logan comes by every now and then with Andrew. He looks totally different. His face is brighter and he's always smiling. Meanwhile, my sister and my ex-husband seem to have ended their relationship quite easily. I guess it was really just a fling for my ex-husband. Perhaps upset about being disliked by his daughter, he dumped my sister without hesitation. However, his despicable affair with his wife's sister became known at his company, which questioned his character. He was relocated to a remote area that will make it even more difficult for him to see his daughter. As for my sister, after being abandoned by everyone, she seemed to live like an empty shell for a while. Then she disappeared. We filed a missing persons report, but I have a feeling we'll never find my sister.